Imagine a stranger who can walk into the dark, private corners of your life, sit beside you at a lonely lover's lane, stand in the trees while you kiss, approach the car where two teenagers whisper, and open fire. Imagine he leaves no motive, no confession, only a cold symbol and riddles written in cipher, taunting the city's newspapers, daring detectives to catch him. Now imagine that stranger vanishes into the fog, and for decades, every new clue only breeds more questions. This is the story of the Zodiac, a killer who wrote to the world, who signed with a cold, circular cross, and who turned the Bay Area into his stage. Tonight, we follow every step, the murders, the chilling letters, the ciphers, the suspects, and the many ways a mystery can devour a community.
By the end of this video, you will hear details that nearly caught a suspect, evidence that was dismissed, and a newly solved code that still refuses to name a face. We will place you inside the minds of victims, investigators, and the man who called himself Zodiac. And we will keep asking the same terrible question. Who was he? And how did he make emptiness into an obsession?
The late 1960s, America is changing. Politically charged, culturally restless, and under the veneer of peace, there are lonely roads and empty parks, places where couples go to hide from the day. Northern California had its share of beauty and secret edges. And along one of those edges, on a small county road near Benicia, two teenagers parked on Lake Herman Road were waiting for privacy. Betty Lou Jensen was 17. David Faraday was 16. They were quiet, ordinary, a young couple in love. At nightfall, their car would be the last place they were seen alive. Police later wrote how the scene looked. One bullet-ridden body in the trunks of the car, another slumped and ruined. Investigators found .22 shells, small, almost anonymous. No struggle in the leaves, no witness who saw a face. At first, the county labeled it a tragic local killing. But months later, when another attack appeared out of the dark on an American holiday, a whispered connection began to take root.
Documentary, the man who would later claim both these killings would write tauntingly to newspapers. He would say he enjoyed killing, he would draw a circle with a cross, and he would challenge the police to find him. The first sparks of a legend were being written, but the police didn't know that yet. Independence Day, 1969. Fireworks elsewhere. At the Blue Rock Springs parking lot, Darlene Ferrin and Michael McGow were in a parked car. Suddenly, a car pulled alongside. A flashlight blinded them. Shots rang out. Michael was hit, but lived. Darlene was fatally wounded. Michael later gave a first-hand description of the shooter. A white man, a short haircut, perhaps in his late 20s or 30s. Vallejo police broadcast a composite sketch. The shooting became immediate local news. The call came later that night. A man called Vallejo police and said he had shot the couple and that he had also killed the teenagers months earlier on Lake Herman Road. The voice claimed ownership and then hung up. A pattern began to form, not just killings, but a voice that wanted credit.
For the survivors and the families, the nightmare was raw and immediate. For detectives, the conflict was twofold: an internal pressure to produce answers under the public glare, and an external fight against an anxious community that demanded swift justice. Those pressure points would bend investigative decisions in ways we will later see had consequences.
Days after the Vallejo shootings, the Bay Area received letters and cards. The killer mailed a 408-character cipher to 3 newspapers. The message contained a chilling admission: "I like killing people because it is so much fun." A local school teacher and his wife cracked it in just days, and the text was published. Proof the killer loved to play with the public. That publication mattered in 2 ways. It fed the Zodiac's ego, and it spread his mythology nationwide. The Zodiac demanded the Chronicle print his letters. He demanded his cipher be publicized. He taunted the police for mistakes. In one broadcast, he noted a radio description he claimed was wrong,
and he used that small sliver of attention to control the narrative. To him, murders were both act and performance. But ciphers would not always be so easy. One later ciphertext, the 340 symbol code, would remain unsolved for half a century, a message that refused to yield its secret. Why did the Zodiac encrypt his boasting? What did he hope to achieve by leaving puzzles instead of names? September 27, 1969, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were picnicking near Lake Berryessa. A man in a hood stood and approached. He wore a bizarre costume, a white mask and an emblem, a circle with a cross through it. He bound the couple, stabbed them, then carved the Zodiac symbol into their car door, along with the dates of previous attacks. Cecilia died. Brian survived. Assault of detail remained. The costume and the symbol, now irreversibly tied to the killer's identity. Here, the Zodiac's behavior became theatrical and ritualized. He marked his territory, he stamped the crime scene with identity, and he again orchestrated media attention by sending letters. He wanted credit, he wanted fear, he wanted control. October 11, 1969, the Zodiac's most audacious act, killing a taxi driver in the heart of San Francisco, changed the tone of the hunt. Paul Stein, 29, was shot in his cab in Presidio Heights. The killer removed a piece of the driver's blood-stained shirt, a piece he later mailed to the Chronicle as proof of authorship. He called the newspaper and police, mocking them for their mistakes. The city was terrified. A killer had struck in an urban neighborhood, not in the isolation of lovers' lanes. Yet, the Presidio murder also introduced critical contradictions. Witness reports described a man of solid build. The costume witness at Berryessa suggested a different image. The Zodiac was inconsistent, or perhaps intentionally deceptive. Investigators followed every clue: blood, clothing, handwriting, but each lead required careful sifting. Across the killings and letters, a psychological profile emerges. The Zodiac's communications demonstrate grandiosity, control, sadism, and a thirst for recognition. He used ciphers, a mind at play, but his threats also included horrific boasts about murdering children. He adopted symbols, he composed taunts, and he sought to terrorize entire communities. But profiles are not arrests, they are maps, helpful for narrowing suspects, but not definitive. The Zodiac's pattern shows careful planning. He chose isolated locations, he used a small caliber weapon when quick shots could work, he escaped without trace, yet sometimes he made mistakes. He was seen by witnesses, he left shells, and he called police from a phone. Those mistakes would produce leads that in many cases would wither for lack of forensic power. One of those leads would later point at a local man whose hobby, habits, and possessions made detectives look twice. Another lead would produce the most controversial suspect in the Zodiac story, but each time, evidence would slip through investigators' fingers. This segment follows investigators, their internal battles, political pressure, and forensics limits of the era. In 1969 to 1970, police departments coordinated, shared sketches, and set up task forces, but interdepartmental rivalries and incomplete procedures hindered progress. Crime scenes were sometimes compromised by curious onlookers. Witnesses gave inconsistent statements. Lab testing in the 1960s lacked DNA. Ballistics could narrow weapon types, but rarely a specific owner. And there was the pressure of the media. Robert Graysmith, a Chronicle cartoonist, obsessively researched the case and published a book that would propel the whole saga into national consciousness. The Zodiac enjoyed the attention. The public demanded swift arrests. Detectives worked in the glare. Every public contradiction, a misreported sighting, a bungled tip, became fodder for both the killer and conspiracy theorists. Documentaries like Dave Toschi carried the weight of the case. They chased leads, sometimes at personal cost. The internal struggle, devotion versus frustration, appears when a lead collapses, when a suspect clears an alibi, when the evidence just won't fit. Those moments of failure are as much a part of the story as the killings themselves.
Arthur Leigh Allen, a local teacher, became the prime public suspect. He owned a Zodiac brand watch. Colleagues recalled morbid jokes. He was linked circumstantially to aspects of the case. Graysmith's obsession with Allen crystallized public suspicion. Police searched Allen's home in 1971. They found weapons and unsettling items. But crucially, DNA from Zodiac letters and stamps tested decades later did not match Allen, and handwriting and key details were inconsistent. This part of the tale is essential. Allen's life was destroyed by suspicion, yet the case against him remained circumstantial. It demonstrates how a community's hunger for an answer can fall on a vulnerable man, and because of that hunger, how the rush to name a culprit can sometimes obscure the facts. Allen died in 1992, still never charged. The Allen episode reminds us the need to solve can create victims out of suspects. It is a warning. Confirmation bias is a killer in its own right.
Decades passed. The 340-symbol cipher, sent in November 1969, defied cryptographers for 51 years. Then, in December 2020, a team of amateur codebreakers announced a solution. The message was not the name of the Zodiac. Instead, it was a taunt. "I hope you are having lots of fun trying to catch me," and references to paradise and slaves. The decoded text epitomized the Zodiac's voice, boasting, deranged, and theatrical. It solved a puzzle, but provided no face. The breakthrough underlined the paradox. Even when a code falls, it can still conceal. Codes can entertain, but they can mislead. The 340 solution brought renewed interest, but the man behind the symbol remained as faceless as ever.
After Allen's death, investigators turned to other names. Over the decades, scholars, journalists, private sleuths, and internet communities proposed dozens of people. In 2021, a private group called the Casebreakers named Gary Francis Poste, a house painter and veteran, as their suspect. They cited scars, alleged hidden photos in a darkroom, and other circumstantial items. The claim generated headlines and heated debate. The FBI said it had not officially confirmed the identification and reiterated the case remained open. Other suspects, from local residents to famous criminals, have been proposed and then tempered by evidence. Joseph D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer, once drew attention because he lived and worked in similar areas and had a violent profile, but his DNA and other facts did not match. Engineers, journalists, and retired cops poring over records, searching for the one detail that would crack the case. Why do modern amateurs keep fighting this cold case? Because even failed leads teach us where to look next, and because the Zodiac left a trail of small, maddening clues. Somewhere, one of those clues may still hold the answer.
We must pause to center the victims and the family. Their pain has been stretched across decades. Michael Maggio survived but carried physical and psychological scars. The parents of Betty Lou, the family of Darlene Ferrin, and of Paul Stein. Their lives were rearranged by grief and a need for answers. Brian Hartnell, who survived a near-fatal stabbing, testified and carried memory like a ghost. Cecilia Shepard died days after the Berryessa attack. For each family, the killer's letters were cruelty. He showed no remorse and sought spectacle. This human center reminds us that the Zodiac's taunt was not abstract, it was personal. His letters were directed at living people, at the city, at newspapers, at the families he shattered. Their internal conflict, grief, anger, hope, is the emotional engine of this story, a counterpoint to the killer's narcissistic play. For decades, the investigation suffered from limited science. But in the 21st century, DNA technology advanced. Police exhumed evidence, re-examined stamps, and applied mitochondrial DNA testing and genetic genealogy where possible. Small fragments of DNA from letters provided partial profiles but few full matches. Ballistics and handwriting analysis were re-evaluated with fresh eyes. Still, the passage of time destroyed some evidence. Some items were lost or contaminated during the initial chaotic days. Modern methods have solved other cold cases. Why not the Zodiac? Because the case spans jurisdictions and because the Zodiac often used items that leave few biological traces. Yet each new lab test refines the search and eliminates suspects. Science is slow but truthful. In that slow work, the killer's luck has been reduced piece by piece. When the 340 cipher was solved, it proved that modern collaboration, amateurs and pros together, can still push this case forward. But the solution also reminded investigators a solved cipher is a step, not the finish.
The Zodiac became a cultural monster. Robert Graysmith's books, David Fincher's film, endless podcasts, Reddit threads, and true crime YouTubers turned fascination into an industry. The Zodiac symbol, that circle and cross, spread across screens. Pop culture amplified the myth. That amplification can be double-edged. It creates attention that may help investigations, but it also invites speculation, hoaxes, and false confessions. We must ask, has culture helped or hindered the truth? The answer is both. Cultural obsession kept the case alive when official interest faltered, but it also clouded judgment and promoted sensational theories that pulled resources away from verifiable leads.
The Zodiac case is more than a true crime mystery. It is a mirror showing us fear, obsession, and the limits of justice. Decades later, no one has been convicted. The letters, the codes, the symbol, they still whisper from old evidence boxes, daring us to keep looking. And maybe that's the real legacy of the Zodiac. Not just the murders, but the emptiness he left behind, the questions he carved into history. Now I want to hear from you. Who do you think the Zodiac really was? Do you believe the case will ever be solved? Or is the mystery itself the answer? If you found this story chilling, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our deep dives into history's darkest mysteries. Share this video with a friend who loves true crime and keep the conversation alive in the comments.